Margaret Atwood joined the Velshi Band Book Club to talk about her seminal dystopian novel, The Handmaid's Tale. She reminded us that she got all the ideas for the book set in a near-future autocratic theocracy from actual history, from real things that had happened in the world and could happen again. She actually kept the newspaper clippings that she used as research when she wrote this book in 1985. And this week, there's a story out of the state of Ohio that reads like a building block of Gilead come to life. Ohio Republicans introduced a bill that would allow the government to track every pregnancy from beginning to end. The measure, called House Bill 754, HB 754, would create a state-run registry of pregnancies, requiring medical providers to file a certificate of life within the Ohio Department of Health within 10 days of examining a pregnant patient and detecting a fetal heartbeat. It's worth noting here that what we call a fetal heartbeat is more accurately described as fetal heart activity, which the Cleveland Clinic notes begins as the cells that will later form the fetal heart begin to cluster early in the first trimester and can create electrical pulses. The medical provider would be required to provide a copy of that certificate of life to the pregnant woman. The bill also mandates that fetal deaths be registered with the state and that providers specify whether a pregnancy ended in miscarriage, abortion, or stillbirth. I'm not done. Then a cause of death would need to be certified within 48 hours. And if a fetus is deemed to have died in a, quote, violent, suspicious, unusual, or sudden, end quote, manner, a coroner or a medical examiner would be brought in. So who decides which fetal deaths, which are otherwise known as miscarriages, which are also very common, should be deemed suspicious? And for that matter, a miscarriage is medically defined as a sudden or spontaneous loss of a fetus. It is always sudden. That's literally what a miscarriage is. According to the Mayo Clinic, about 10 to 20% of known pregnancies result in a sudden loss of a fetus, a miscarriage. The actual number is likely much higher because many miscarriages happen very early in a pregnancy, in some cases before a woman realizes that they are pregnant. As the journalist Jessica Valenti writes, quote, let's be clear about what this really is. An attempt to build an infrastructure for pregnancy surveillance, not just tracking who's pregnant, but documenting how every pregnancy ends and creating a pathway for scrutiny if the state decides that something looks off. While this legislation would be insane, no matter where it was introduced, the fact that it's being proposed in a state like Ohio, where in 2023, voters passed an amendment enshrining the right to abortion in the state's constitution, is telling. The state already requires a death certificate for miscarriages past 20 weeks of gestation. So while this bill, if it's signed into law, would certainly face legal challenges, it's not entirely clear whether it would be overturned in a post-Roe legal climate. And regardless of whether or not legislation like HB 754 passes, it's a terrifying signal of intent. It tells us exactly what kind of regime conservative lawmakers are trying to implement. It lays bare the purpose of the anti-abortion movement, which has always been about controlling women and their bodies. And it heralds a sort of reproductive police state that sounds a lot like Chapter 11 of The Handmaid's Tale. Quote, yesterday morning I went to the doctor, was taken by a guardian, one of those with the red armbands who were in charge of such things. We rode in a red car, him in front, me in the back. No twin went with me. On these occasions, I'm solitaire. I'm taken to the doctor's office once a month for tests, urine, hormones, cancer smear, blood tests, the same as before, except that now it's obligatory.